Look at this scale diagram. At 245 meters long, the Hindenburg dwarfed modern jumbo jets like the Boeing 747. It was only 24 meters shorter than the Titanic. In May 1937, this massive floating city took to the skies for its transatlantic voyage. Within the belly of this colossal structure, you can see the layout designed specifically for the ultra-rich. Passengers paid over $7,000 today to access private sleeping quarters, a dedicated dining room, and a lounge complete with a grand piano. On May 6th, as it approached its landing at the Lakehurst Naval Air Station in New Jersey, that historic voyage abruptly ended. In exactly 34 seconds, a massive fire consumed the entire structure, destroying the ship and killing 36 people. Within days of the footage reaching theaters, public confidence in lighter-than-air flight evaporated. The sight of the world's largest aircraft vanishing in a half-minute inferno effectively halted a century of aviation progress. Today, we accept that flying means sitting in a cramped, loud metal tube moving at near supersonic speeds. But the airship era offered a completely different reality, one that was slow, silent, and incredibly spacious. The physical principles driving these two machines are entirely opposed. Modern airplanes use massive engines to generate mechanical power, physically fighting gravity to stay aloft. Airships took the exact opposite approach. They flew by making themselves physically lighter than the atmosphere around them. How did engineers actually build these massive floating structures? What specific mechanical failure caused the Hindenburg to crash? And why might the warming of our planet force us to bring this lost technology back? For most of human history, flying was a lethal experiment. In the 1500s, inventors tried to mimic birds, strapping chicken feathers to their arms and jumping off castles. They usually ended up with broken bones. A breakthrough finally happened in the 1780s. In France, the Montgolfier brothers noticed that heat from a fire caused a piece of fabric to rise. They realized that trapping hot air, which is physically lighter than cool air, creates an upward lifting force. By 1783, they built a large cloth balloon and demonstrated it for the King of France. They placed a duck and a hen inside to prove animals could survive the altitude. Soon after, humans safely took flight using the exact same principles of buoyancy. But these early hot air balloons had a severe limitation. They had no rigid structure and absolutely no way to steer. Passengers were entirely at the mercy of the wind. Floating was the simple part. Steering a massive, buoyant structure against the wind required an entirely different level of structural rigidity and propulsion. It would take a specialized framework to turn a drifting balloon into a steerable ship. In the 1890s, a retired German army officer named Ferdinand von Zeppelin proposed a radical solution. Instead of one large, floppy balloon, he designed a rigid outer framework made of aluminum housing multiple independent gas cells inside. It took decades of grueling trial and error. Zeppelin sacrificed his personal wealth, even mortgaging his wife's assets to fund prototypes. His early models, from LZ-1 to LZ-4, suffered severe technical flaws and were repeatedly destroyed by strong winds and storms. His persistence eventually paid off. The successful flights of his later models won government backing, allowing him to perfect the massive, rigid airship design that would officially take his name. Zeppelin brilliantly solved the structural problems of flight, but to achieve buoyancy at that immense scale, his entire fleet relied on hydrogen, a highly flammable and volatile gas. After World War I, an engineer named Hugo Eckener took over the Zeppelin company. He envisioned a new purpose for these machines, transforming them from military weapons into luxurious transatlantic passenger ships known as Angels of Peace. Eckener knew the fatal risks of hydrogen, but he was trapped by international politics. The United States controlled the global supply of helium, an inert, completely safe gas, and placed a strict embargo on exporting it. The German company had no choice but to continue using explosive hydrogen. The situation worsened in 1933. The Nazi Party seized control of the Zeppelin operations. They sidelined the safety-conscious Eckener, replacing highly trained personnel with party loyalists, and used the massive ships to fly fascist propaganda across the globe. When the Hindenburg exploded a few years later, Rumors immediately spread that an anti-Nazi saboteur had planted a bomb on board. Decades of strict investigation proved this conspiracy theory entirely false. The true cause was mechanical. Look at this wireframe model of the Hindenburg. Investigators found that as the ship battled a severe storm during its landing, the pilot executed a sharp turn. The extreme tension snapped a structural wire near the tail. That broken wire slashed open a gas cell, causing hydrogen to silently leak and pool within the hull. The final ingredient was the weather itself. The fierce storm had charged the Hindenburg's metal frame with static electricity. When the crew dropped the wet landing ropes to the ground, it grounded the ship. A static charge sparked at the exact location of the slashed cell, instantly igniting the highly concentrated hydrogen. No explosives were necessary. The disaster was the result of a strict international helium embargo, compromised safety protocols under the Nazi regime, and a single, unavoidable spark of static electricity. The terrifying imagery of the crash was broadcast worldwide. Seeing those massive flames completely destroyed the public's willingness to travel in hydrogen-filled airships. While the Zeppelin company collapsed, heavier-than-air airplanes were rapidly advancing. Engineers were dropping the operating costs of passenger planes while drastically increasing their reliability. Airplanes could travel at speeds approaching 1,000 kilometers per hour without requiring millions of cubic feet of explosive gas. They easily monopolized global transport, driving the rigid airship into total extinction. But that victory created a long-term problem. Today, fuel burned by commercial jet travel is a primary driver of global carbon emissions. This environmental pressure is reviving the lost science of buoyancy. Because safe, non-flammable helium is accessible worldwide, the giant airship's core design is viable again. A UK-based company is already running test flights with this massive hybrid airship, the Airlander 10. Preparing for commercial flights within the next decade, it offers near-silent travel while producing only a tiny fraction of an airplane's carbon output. The Hindenburg disaster stalled airship development for nearly a century. As environmental costs mount, the inherent efficiency of buoyancy is becoming harder for engineers to ignore. Low-speed, high-efficiency flight is no longer a luxury. It's a climate necessity.